Now, and I'll edit out the first couple of moments when I post it up to YouTube. So, welcome to this evening, talking about copyrights, intellectual property, and the seventh commandment that we should not steal. I am Pastor Norma Malfatti. I'm the director for Evangelical Mission for our Synod, the Upstate New York Synod. And co-leading with me today is Julie Grindle. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Julie Grindle. I'm the assistant to the bishop for candidacy and mobility, which doesn't sound like it should be a big thing about copyrights and permissions, except that for the 30 years before this, I was a church musician and dealt with copyrights and permissions always in every church that I served. So I was sort of the go-to person for that. And I also worked pretty extensively as a contractor for Augsburg Fortress. So I'm in communication with them pretty regularly about their copyrights and their licensing and can answer questions about that. So that's why I'm here with Pastor Norma.
And before we dive headlong in, thought we'd just take a moment just to introduce ourselves. So, and we'll introduce by invitation. So I'll invite the first person, and then after you share who you are, you'll invite the next person. We've all got names on here. And in addition to who you are, what congregation you're a part of, and the role, what is your burning question that you might have about copyrights? What is it that brought you here tonight? And so I'm going to invite Melissa to introduce herself.
Okay, I'm Melissa Gerald. I'm the administrative assistant at Our Redeemer Lutheran in Scotia. And I have been following the emails since the pandemic started saying, oh, you know, we're waiving these obligations for right now, but eventually we're going to kick them in. And we've had a long-standing membership with Sundays and Seasons, but that only really covers us in print as far as I know. But now we are live streaming our services, and we definitely have to purchase an agreement with one license. Not exactly sure how all of that's going to work, but hoping to get that information. And I think Pastor Dan said that, Julie, you know how to reference something in the red hymnal that tells us if it falls under one license or doesn't. Okay.
Yeah, I can help you with that tonight.
Okay.
If you want to invite someone to introduce themselves next.
I'll invite Jill.
I am Jill Becker. I'm from Messiah Lutheran Church in Rotterdam, New York. Right now, I am our virtual vocalist, I guess. So, and I think the question that we have is, we are also doing virtual worship. And once we're getting back into in-person worship, we want to continue that virtual for those people who can't make it to church. And we have found that our congregation members like to have the words in front of them to sing when they're at home. So that's what my question is, you know, what we need to do in order to do that legally. I'm going to go with Justina.
Hi, I'm Justina. I'm with Trinity Lutheran in Herkimer, New York. And you could kind of say I was the most tech savvy one and started getting a lot of jobs in March. We did purchase the one license, but I'm concerned we're not doing it all correctly still. So I'm hopeful to clarify any gaps that I need to fill and make sure we are actually doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm going to just put this out there as a disclaimer. I'm on vacation, but I didn't want to miss this. So the family's in the other room. So if I'm in and out, I apologize in advance. And who's left? I don't even have my full screen. Rihanna, is that how you say your name?
Rianne, it's okay.
Rianne, sorry.
I'm Rianne Johnson. I'm the parish administrator at Messiah Lutheran Church in Rotterdam. I guess my burning question, I mean, it's not really a question, it's just a curiosity. Our council just went through approving the budget for us to get licensing and everything. I, did the research to, see what I have to do, but I know there's a certain way you have to, show that you have a license during the streaming to prove that you have the license. And I'm just kind of curious about that piece, because that would fall under my job, and making sure that happens.
Excellent. Thanks. And I hope our plan is all of your burning questions or wonderings. That is exactly why Julie and I said, we need to do this, because it's not just the four of you. And in fact, for Melissa, a conversation with Pastor Dan and Pastor Darren at Good Shepherd in Glenville, this is what had us thinking, oh, maybe there are more congregations that have questions around copyright, and people are using things so differently today than they were a year ago. And so that's essentially how this came to be today. And I'll tell you, for me, what my deep passion for this comes from a couple of different ways. First is knowing some musicians, and getting to know them and hearing about their own frustrations about people who take and use their material and don't acknowledge that, right? Regardless of whether or not you have a license, to even acknowledge, right, that where something came from. And when I was in seminary, I was very fortunate. In my class, we had a former judge and a former lawyer in our class, and they actually taught us a whole class in our church's worship, I think, class on intellectual property rights. And right, so we got all of those little details, and really opened my eyes about the ways in which it is so easy to use someone else's material and not give them credit. And many times not giving them credit also lends itself to literally be stealing from them because they're not getting their royalties. And it might not always be a whole lot of money in their royalties. It's still money that's owed them. So that's kind of where my passion, Pastor Carolyn Hetrick, really got me excited about it when she taught that class for us. Oh my gosh, it must have been well over 10 years ago. So I thought that we would get ourselves grounded, and I'm going to share my screen. I thought we'd get ourselves grounded in just talking about what it is, why as Christians we want to be concerned about copyrights and licensing, right? Not just for the not just the logistics, not just because it's the law, but what does it mean for us as people of God? And so hopefully you can all see my screen. Just give a thumbs up if you can see that, right? All right, excellent. So in the article that I sent you, or that Julie and I sent to you from the Journal of Lutheran Ethics, it was written by Jonathan Runman, who's also a musician. And in it, he wrote it around the time in which Jeremiah was coming up in the lectionary, and that story of, see, I am doing a new thing. But for me, when I think about scripture and the seventh commandment, I really think about what Paul says. I think part of that has to do, right, we're Lutherans, and so much of our theology is not only grounded in Jesus, but also grounded in Paul's understanding of Jesus and what it means to be a follower of Jesus. So Paul writes this in the 13th chapter in Romans. Therefore, one must be subject, not only because of the wrath, but also because of conscience. For the same reason, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants, busy with this very thing. Pay to all what is due them, taxes to whom taxes are due, revenue to whom revenue is due, respect to whom respect is due, honor to whom honor is due. Owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. And right, as you can see here, perhaps you might even see already where you might see copyright come into this, and intellectual property come into this. Because it's not just a matter of the wrath, whether you're thinking about the wrath of God, or you're thinking about the consequences of government, right? We do this because of conscience. We do this because we don't steal, we don't break the commandments, not only because of that new law that God wrote on our heart, right? Any one of your sermons, as Jonathan Runman said in the article, any one of your pastor's sermons, they're not going to get up on a Sunday and explain to you that do not steal means don't put on a ski mask and go out with a weapon and rob. Or my favorite explanation of the seventh commandment of why we don't do this. One of the elders of my former congregation had a little yellow smart car, and I think that they are the most adorable things ever. They're little, they're cute, they are better for the environment than other vehicles. And so I used to say, right, I cannot steal Barb's little yellow smart car, because if I were to steal Barb's little yellow smart car, I couldn't be your pastor anymore. And as Louise Fian used to say, she's like, you're right, you wouldn't be our pastor anymore. We'd still love you, but you couldn't stay here, right? That's right, those kinds of consequences. That's why we don't steal. It's about the ways in which we're called to live together in community. That's what those 10 commandments were given to the people in the wilderness all those years ago. They were given in order to provide some guidelines in the ways in which we are to live together in community so that everyone can experience the flourishing of life. Everyone can hopefully experience what God desires for them. Right? And so that's why all of the commandments can be summed up in love your neighbor as yourself, and why love does no wrong to a neighbor, because it really thinks of the other first. It doesn't think of yourself first, which is such a flip of the way the world usually works. And so it's with those words that I wanted to open us tonight, and then now share a word of prayer. So let's take a deep breath. And let's pray. Holy, mighty, and gracious God, we give you thanks for this day. I give you thanks for the leaders that are on this call now, and for those who will be watching this video later, for their commitment to loving neighbor, for their commitment to honoring the work of artists, and for the leadership that they provide in the congregations that they are a part of. We ask that you be with us this night, and open our ears and our eyes. Help us to hear the thing that you are doing. Help us to hear the ways in which not only we can love others, but also wading through some of the complicated pieces so that we might not tire of the work of honoring copyright, but instead celebrate the work that artists, musicians, those that write liturgy have given us, so that we might glorify you, so that we might praise you, because that is our goal. And we hope that all that we do and all that we say might glorify you and your holy name. And it is in your name we pray. Amen. So of course, we're Lutheran, so right, we always start with scripture, but we also look at what Martin Luther has said and how Martin Luther explained. And so this will be a little bit more interactive. So I wonder, and you could just unmute yourself and go, if someone would be willing to read that first paragraph for us. This is Luther's explanation of the seventh commandment in the Large Catechism. Uh-oh. We're shy tonight. All right. Oh,
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Julie, go right ahead.
The seventh commandment, you are not to steal. Let all people know then that it is their duty, on pain of God's displeasure, not to harm their neighbors, to take advantage of them, or to defraud them by any faithless or underhanded business transaction. Much more than that, they are also obligated faithfully to protect their neighbor's property and to promote and further their interests, especially when they get money, wages, and provisions for doing so.
Thanks. Right. So when we talk about why, and I'm sure you've all figured it out at this point, like following copyright is about the work of another person. And not only when we don't give proper attribution to their work, but when we don't report how we're using their work, right? That takes away their wages and royalties. So it's not simply just buying the license. And Julie's going to talk about these logistics in a little bit. But once you've bought the license, then it's your responsibility also to report how you're using that. And Sundays and Seasons gets a little complicated because if you're just copying and pasting a portion of liturgy, we don't always remember how to report that kind of copyright and how we're using that. Because the people who do this work, they get a royalty, and depending upon what that is will depend upon the size of that and how often they get that, but it is their wages and their provisions for doing so. And there's some people for which writing music is their only vocation. And so if that's their only vocation, then certainly that becomes all the more important. How about the second paragraph?
I can read that.
Great, thanks, Jill.
Stealing should not be narrowly restricted, but it should pertain to anything that has to do with our neighbor. We will sum it up as we have done in the previous commandments. First, we are forbidden to do our neighbors any injury or wrong in any way imaginable, whether by damaging, withholding, or interfering with their possessions and property. We are not even to consent to or permit such a thing, but are rather to avert and prevent it. In addition, we are commanded to promote and further our neighbors' interests, and when they suffer any want, we are to help, share, and lend to both friends and foes.
Right. Luther's pretty clear. And the we there, right, is not just Martin Luther, but it's that evangelical Lutheran movement, right? And back when Luther was alive and the Lutheran movement started, they were actually called evangelicals, which is part of the reason why evangelical is part of the name of our denomination now. So I'm going to stop that share and just ask, do you have questions? Are there thoughts? Is this new for you? And what this is of thinking about copyright in this way? Maybe, maybe not. I'm guessing that you've come here tonight because you know in some way, shape, or form, right, that this is not just a legality thing, but it's a faith thing, right? It's the things that we do and say. And this is part of the reason why I love Martin Luther and I love Paul, is because they don't mince words. they get right down to the heart of the matter, and they don't often sugarcoat anything. If you've read anything of Martin Luther, you know he doesn't really sugarcoat very often, and in fact, often will use some pretty strong language from time to time. And again, it's that line of saying, right, we're not only forbidden to do our neighbor's injury or wrong in any way imaginable, but we're also to help to promote and further our neighbors. And I think of the ways in which we honor with not only getting the copyright licensing and the reporting, but even just on the regular, if we weren't in these COVID times and trying to figure out how do we report it properly on streaming, even just acknowledging, where did the prelude come from? Who wrote that piece of music? Some congregations have been a part of, they not only share who wrote the music, but they might even share a little word or a little piece about what was it about that piece of music as a way of honoring the artist. And that goes back not only for artists that are alive today, but those artists that might have died 100 years ago, and using their music, because it's about experiencing the art in its fullness as much as it is about honoring the artist, him or herself. And with that kind of setting, that's what takes us into the next part to talk about now the logistics. How do we go about reporting that copyright? Where do we find that information? And so I'm going to turn it over to Julie to do those things.
Thank you so much, Pastor Norma. This one of the things I would always, anytime that the church secretary and I would be dealing with these sorts of things, for the bulletin, and back then it was the bulletin, right? It wasn't streaming necessarily. You know, we would discuss, if churches can't do this, if churches can't follow the law, then how can we expect other people to do it, right? And I know, I'm thankful you all are here because I know you want to do that. And so my hope tonight is to give you information, probably that there's going to be some that you know, and I can almost guarantee that there's going to be probably 3 things I say that you're going to be like, what? We have to do that. And I say that not to scare you, but copyright and licensing is probably the hardest, most, I'm not going to say time consuming, but it is something you have to stay on top of. Someone in your congregation has to stay on top of it. And it's for the sake of the hymn writer, the composer, the text writer, the arranger, etc. So what I'd like to say first is this. If you want to play a hymn in worship, sing a hymn or liturgy part, play a song written since probably 1900 or 1920, reprint a hymn, reprint now a hymn or a text. So whether it's in an online bulletin or a paper bulletin or stream your service, you're going to need a license. So any of those things, I was talking to my sister earlier today. I said, did you know that when you want to reprint a hymn in a bulletin, you have to probably have a license for that? And she said, but why? You own the hymnals. I said, you still have to have a license for it. So a couple of things I want to start off with before I get to Sundays and Seasons and one license. There was a question about the ELW, and there's how can we go in the ELW and know, does everyone have ELW, by the way, that's here? How do we know what we need permission to reprint or stream and what we don't, as far as hymns? So let me be specific about hymns versus liturgy for a moment. In the ELW, in the back, I have my ELW right here. Page 1173, 1173. I've been in the back, I've been in these pages almost more than to the hymn pages specifically. There is a list of every service hymn, service music and hymn in the hymnal, and it lists the copyright acknowledgements. If you go to this list and you're looking for a hymn and it is not listed. Let me say that again. If you go to the list of hymns that starts on page 1173 and it is not listed, that hymn is public domain, and you can reprint and stream and play that hymn to your heart's content. Now, let me be clear. You can't play an arrangement of that hymn out of a book somewhere necessarily. That's maybe under a different copyright. But if it's in this hymnal and it's not listed in these pages back here, it is public domain and you are free to use that material. So for instance, I'm looking here and it skips from 245 to 247. So if I go to hymn 246 in the ELW, which is, get there, Hark a Thrilling Voice is Sounding. This hymn you can reprint and stream and sing. You do not have to list anything. You can just do it. Okay, it's public domain. It's really important to know that. Now, if your organist says, but I want to play a prelude on that tune because we're singing that hymn in worship, that's different. You're going to need a license to cover that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to just get that out of the way. Those public domain hymns, there's quite a few public domain hymns in the hymnal. It's not many of the favorites. So yeah, Justina.
Question about that. Should you note on there somehow still anything so that people would know, or it's okay to just let it go?
If you're reprinting the hymn, it's always good to say who the text and music are by, right?
Okay.
So that you want to include for sure. But you really don't have to put anything. You're perfectly fine to just say this is public domain if you want. That's what I would typically do, especially if you're streaming, because then you're less likely to get tagged by YouTube, especially if they see public domain, they're gonna probably leave you alone.
And you might still get tagged for things that are in the public domain. I know that a couple of videos that we posted for the Synod that were public domain, when they got flagged, I just had to write back and say, these hymns are in the public domain. Or I wrote back and said, we are covered under a license. And it was on the screen when the song was playing. And here's the information again. So if you're abiding by all of those things, even if someone contests, it's really easy to shoot back a message and say, nope, we're in compliance. And YouTube removes that, particularly YouTube removes very quickly.
Yep. The other thing about that back of the book, those pages, is when a hymn is listed there, it tells you very specifically what is covered by a license. In other words, it'll say the tune is copyrighted by Augsburg Fortress. And that's what you need the license for. Maybe the text is public domain, but the tune is not. Maybe the text and the tune are both public domain, but the arrangement is not. So here's the difference. You've got three things to deal with. You have the tune, so the composer wrote the tune. You have the text that the text writer wrote, and then you have the arrangement, which is the harmonization that your organist or your pianist is playing. Three different things that could be under copyright, which you would need a license for. When I was reporting the hymn that I'm going to use at my 9 at 9 on Thursday today in our one license, and I had to report both the arrangement and the text, but not the tune. It is in the public domain. So this is why it can get sticky, and you just have to be really careful with each and every hymn. The nice thing about what's in the back of the hymnal is you can literally take the wording in the back of the hymnal, lock, stock, and barrel out, and I'll show you how to do that and put it with your one license language that they give you, and that's what you put in your print material or what goes online and in your streaming. It'll just say copyright, blah, 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 blah. And that's what you put in and you're good to go. And that's how you'll know what to use. So that's the back of the hymnal, really useful. It also lists all of the copyright owners in the hymnal. One really important thing to note, not every hymn in the hymnal is covered under both one license or CCLI. Those are the two main licenses that Lutheran churches hold. There are hymns in the hymnal that are still owned by the composer, for instance. They didn't sell their license to one license or CCLI. And so if you really, really, really want to use that hymn, you probably have to pay the composer directly. That often requires either calling the composer directly and asking for permission or sending a letter. And if I needed to do that, and typically that was only for a special occasion, that's usually, I would give at least a 6-week lead time before you want to use that hymn. So I think long and hard before you want to use a hymn that's not covered under a license that you currently own or that you are going to buy. There aren't too many hymns like that, but there are some. And there are some favorites. I was looking at using the hymn, The Trumpets Sound, the Angels Sing, and I don't think that's covered under, it's not under one license. It may be under CCLI, but the Synod is not carrying a CCLI license right now. So the point is, I just knew I couldn't use it on Thursday. So, you have to sort of weigh that with what you're willing to pay license-wise. Okay, is that pretty clear about the back of the hymnal? It's handy. I know, Melissa, you had a question about that, right? Oh, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
I actually had looked on the One License website and compared the different companies, copyright, I don't know what to call them. Anyways, the list that One License covers compared to the list on page 1172 in the hymnal. And there were 4 that are not covered under one license. So does that would mean if we only subscribe to one license, any of the hymns in the hymnal that are copyrighted under those 4 companies we can't use publicly?
Those 4 hymns that aren't covered?
No, not 4 hymns, 4 of the, on page, do you have 1172 open?
Yeah, I can get it open.
There's Licensing Associates, Lutheran World Federation, Music Services, Inc., and the Copyright Company. Those 4 are not listed under the one license. So that means any hymns that are licensed under those 4 companies, we wouldn't be able to use publicly?
That's correct. It's possible that they are covered under the CCLI license.
Yeah,
So
I don't know if our
that.
church would want to have to pay for both. I mean, you said the Synod uses one license?
We do.
So that's probably
We do.
more comprehensive than CCLI?
It all depends on what your congregation does, right? CCLI, I don't want to pinhole it, but it tends to be more praise music. So if your congregation does more praise music than, or contemporary music, I don't particularly love that term, but if you do more contemporary music, CCLI may be the way to go. Because the CCLI and one license, some overlap in some ways in what they cover. If you tend towards, and again, I don't want to, traditional is the wrong word, but if you tend towards some more traditional hymns and not as many praise hymns, then one license is probably the better way to go. Neither of them, I don't think, is terribly expensive, especially for the size of our congregations. And lots of our congregations do 2 different types of worship. So it may make sense to carry 2 licenses, but I understand that, you might have to make the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's, And that's going to be tough in the streaming category for sure, right? It's one thing to say, well, you know, we do both types of services. And when we were in our buildings all the time, we just won't reprint one, right? And that's fine. But now that we want to stream everything too, we're going to have to make some of those tough decisions probably. It's a great question. Just because they're listed in the back, by the way, doesn't mean that that's the majority of hymns too. Augsburg Fortress, by and large, holds the majority of these copyrights. I think you're going to find that. They did that on purpose, right? They buy as many of these as they can because it's their hymnal. So, but sometimes they can't get the, you know, sometimes it's just too expensive to purchase it. Yeah. So does that answer that question?
Yep.
And remember, we have the new supplement coming out too.
Yes.
So
I just ordered a bunch of those.
good for you. It's awesome. It's really, really awesome. I've been through it many times. So in preparation in another project. So I think you're going to love it. I hope you're going to love it. So I want to talk briefly about Sundays and Seasons, and then I want to talk about one license specifically. So how many of you have a Sundays and Seasons membership? All of you? Melissa, do you all have a Sundays and Seasons?
Actually, yeah, we have a shared membership between our churches.
Great. That's, yeah.
Messiah, Good Shepherd, us, and Prince of Peace.
Okay. So I just want to do some clarification. I'm going to share my screen because there's some, perhaps not among this group, but there is some confusion about what Sundays and Seasons does and what they don't do. So there have been churches who think that because they have Sundays and Seasons, that means that they have the copyright permission to reprint hymns. It's not. That's not the way it is. So I'm going to share my screen. If you can give me a thumbs up that you can see that. Yeah. So here is what is included in a Sundays and Seasons subscription. It's an excellent resource for planning worship. We know that. It has a huge library of current and former Augsburg Fortress publications, going back to LBW, if you still have that in your pews, With One Voice. It has the other publications, This Far by Faith, Libro Liturgico Cantico, which is the Spanish language hymnal. It just has them all in there, and you can search all of those. And you can search copyright for all of those. And the membership comes with a liturgy license, which is really good news. So that means you can reprint any liturgical music from the front of the hymnal because you own the subscription. So you don't have to worry about reporting that. Owning the subscription, by owning the subscription, those who wrote the liturgies get royalties. Okay, that's a really awesome thing. The report that you're going to do in your bulletin or in your streaming you're going to get a Sundays and Seasons, and you're going to say liturgy reprinted under your Sundays and Seasons number, or whatever they give you, or under Sundays and Seasons 2020 or whatever they give you. I don't know if that's been redone since we did it, but we just always re-upped every year, and so we just changed that language every year. And I honestly haven't paid attention to it recently, but since you all own Sundays and Seasons, that's really great. If you didn't own Sundays and Seasons, you would have to buy a separate license that covers liturgies. So that's good news for you that you don't have to do that. What Sundays and Seasons isn't, though, is a system that gives you permission for hymn usage or to record hymn usage. In other words, to let them know that you've used it, even though you can download hymns. This is what gets people. They assume that because they can download a hymn, that something in that system has tracked that and let Sundays and Seasons know that you've used that hymn and that the royalty has been paid, right? This is a common mistake that people make, and is probably the A#1 way that churches use copyrighted material that without a license, because they don't realize, right? They do it innocently, but don't. If you're going to download a hymn from Sundays and Seasons, make sure you have the license and the permission to use that hymn once you've downloaded it, because it's not being reported as the way you think it might be. And there is no blanket permission given to you through Sundays and Seasons. How do you find out what needs a license and what doesn't on Sundays and Seasons? You can do the exact same kind of search on Sundays and Seasons that I just did in the hymnal, except you can do it in any hymnal. And I'm going to show you that in just a second so that you can see the licenses. And then I just had this little note here at the bottom, which I've already said. Copyrights can be held on the text, the tune, or the arrangement, or any combination of these. You must have a license to cover that. So I'm going to stop my screen share. And as I pull up Sundays and Seasons, I'm going to ask if you've got any questions. Feel free to unmute and just ask the question while I pull up Sundays and Seasons. Anybody?
I'm thinking you're going to answer it when you pull up Sundays and Seasons, so I'm waiting.
Okay, no problem. All right, so now I'm going to come back here. I'm going to screen share my Sundays and Seasons. So this should look familiar to everybody probably, right? Here's how you're going to find the copyright information if you want to know about a hymn. So you're going to go to Music. And does someone want to unmute and give me your favorite hymn? You can see I've been doing searches.
I'll tell you.
798.
Wait, what'd you say, 698?
No, 798.
Is that,
Will
what
you
is that?
follow me?
I thought so. The one that I have right here? Okay.
Your screen is, I'm on my iPhone, so it's really tiny.
Oh, okay. So we put, will you come and follow me into the search? We'll do a couple of these. So Pastor Norma, I'll get your favorite hymn too. All right, so we're going to search, will you come and follow me? So right here it is. And so I'm going to click on that and it shows you, will you come and follow me? And you're like, yep, that's the hymn I was looking for. And we're going to go to copyright information. So when I need the blurb for my bulletin or the blurb for my streaming, it's right here. You can literally cut and paste this to go along with your one license information, okay? If we need a one license, you're gonna need all of, no, not all of this. You're gonna need like from text through administered through GIA publications and then all rights reserved used by permission. Sorry. So you don't need all the address and stuff like that. But the first part through here and this part. And then you're gonna have a one license number. I'm gonna show you that in a minute.
Is it bad if you leave the address in there? Like you should make sure to take that all out?
No,
or...
you can leave it in there if you want, but you don't have to have it in there.
Okay.
But then if you scroll down, it says, here's the copyright holder and here are the licenses. So it is under one license. The text, sorry, specifically is under one license. The tune, guess what, is public domain.
Yay!
So you don't need a license to reprint the tune or to sing it. And the arrangement, though, is under one license. So if you use the arrangement, if your organist or pianist plays the arrangement that is in the accompaniment edition that Augsburg Fortress has put out, then you need a license to stream that or reprint it in the hymnal. In this particular case, excuse me, reprint it in your bulletin. In this case, probably all you're reprinting in a bulletin or on screen is the melody. So then you don't have to worry about that. But if they're playing it and accompanying it out of the book, you're going to need it. So that's how you find who holds the license. And if you have a question, you can call GIA. And a lot of Catholic churches, for instance, would have a GIA license. So that's really important for them to know that. Okay, so Pastor Norma, what was the hymn you wanted to search?
Oh, I was good. 583.
Is that Take My Life and Let It Be?
It is.
Or Take My Life That I May Be?
Yeah.
Okay. Searching. And it's this one as opposed to this one.
Yeah.
Okay. There it is. Copyright information. So in this particular case, this is the only copyright notice that would be needed for streaming or for bulletin. The text is in the public domain, so that's handy. The music, Augsburg Fortress is the copyright holder. The license is one license, and there's nothing about the arrangement. So you just need it for the music. You would need the one license.
And it's correct, right, Julie, that if it says, right, for this last one, Augsburg Fortress and one license, you can get from either of them a license. You don't need to have both. You only need to have one of them. That gives you permission to do that.
That's true, but there is no such thing as an Augsburg Fortress hymn license anymore. So you have to use one license. Augsburg Fortress will tell you to go to one and get a one license. They used to have a hymn license, but it is no more.
So then in reality, it shouldn't say Augsburg Fortress down there, but the system hasn't caught up to practice yet.
Correct.
Okay.
I found that out just a few months ago, actually, in another conversation. Does anyone else want to see another search, or are we good on this? Good.
I have a question about during the live stream, does that information have to appear at the entire time the hymn is playing, at the beginning, at the end? Like, I'm not exactly sure where I would put it. You know, technology wise, I may have to figure this out, but like we use YouTube, and there's their live chat function. Could I just stick the copyright information in the live chat?
So I'm going to share my screen one more time and answer that question.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it from the One License website.
Okay.
So if I do this, because I'm pretty sure I'm in the right place on the One License website to do that. So here is, so I've gone, I'm not on the home page, but I've gone to One License from time to time has blog posts that are current to what's going on. And in this particular case, they have this new one up. As you can see, it's from yesterday. Not just a quick fix, streaming is the new way of doing ministry. And so I was reading through this yesterday, and you can go to One License and see this. You do not have to be a member of One License or have a license to see it. I'm going to sort of scroll through here because I think this is where I saw it. And if, oh yeah, here we go. Here are some ways to display your permissions. So, to help ensure your organization does not have videos removed, it's important to correctly display your permissions. You need to display for every piece used in the service, as well as your license attribution line, right? So I just told you, I just showed you on the Augsburg Fortress or on the Sundays and Seasons site what needed to be listed, right? And then you're going to see reprinted podcast streamed with permission under One License, and they will give you a One License number when you sign up. So you can do it in the description of the video. So it doesn't have to be while the video is playing, right? It can be at the end of your service, or it could be at the beginning of your service on a screen that goes up, or it could be at the end of the hymn where you do it. So this is one example. And as I said, this is on the One License site. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see this particular blog post. Here's an example of a slide at the beginning or the end of the service. So it doesn't have to be on every slide where the hymn is. Here's an example, though, Melissa, of what you're just asking. If a song is being performed, it can be on an underlay. If you want to get technical about it, you can do that. And they do say, with many hosting sites using bots to evaluate posts quickly and efficiently, we suggest including the copyright and license information in the description of the video, and using either examples 2 or 3 if you have the ability to do so. Does that kind of answer your questions about that? Yep. Okay. So why are you not going back to, okay. So who had specific questions about one license? Because I want to make sure, did we have questions about how to report it, if I remember correctly?
I'm always a bit concerned in finding the right songs for the text and the music sometimes when I'm searching them, that I'm making the correct choice in the list.
Right. And not, interestingly, and I didn't realize this, sometimes, especially if it's a newer hymn, it might not even be in the list and you have to create it on your own, which I've never done before. I'm just going to put that in as a disclaimer. So let me just log in here. So let's choose a hymn. Who wants to choose a hymn that they like? Anybody?
What if we did Amazing Grace? Because that seems to me like that might have a bunch of different ways, right? One of those songs that that was just asked about, which is the right one.
So first thing I'm going to do is look in the back of the hymnal, because I'm not sure that that's not public domain.
Well, then that's probably not the right song.
But actually, no. But it actually brings me to an excellent, to another point about, let me just look really quickly, about songs based on hymns. So 779 in our hymnal. So that is public domain. So if you're singing the hymn, you're good, right? You don't need to report anything on one license. However, my organist wants to play a setting of Amazing Grace from an Augsburg Fortress publication as the prelude today. Augsburg Fortress is a member of one license, and most of their publications are in one license. I'm just going to scroll down here for a moment. Most of what you are seeing here are, I suspect, compositions written on Amazing Grace that, right, so the music, or they're like choral settings of Amazing Grace. Those are also things that you have to think about, by the way, is the choral music. That's once your choirs can get back together. Maybe that's not something we have to think about yet because choirs can't sing, but you definitely have to think about the instrumental music. If it's less than 100 years old, if it's more, if it's Bach, Mozart, stuff like that, that's all public domain. But if it's by composers, especially living composers, but even something from 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago, it's going to be under a license somewhere and can get tagged So be very, very careful. So right, a lot of these, Pastor Norma, are probably settings of Amazing Grace. And you have to have those covered. Yeah. It's interesting. One license will even tell you if it's public domain, please don't report it. They don't want it junking up their system.
So
like
if
this
you stop,
here,
right?
this right here, Mac Wilberg is one of the most famous arrangers of hymns into choral anthems. He does the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Okay, I guarantee this is a setting of his, of Amazing Grace, that someone wanted to use as a choral piece. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. So, right. So this Amazing Grace, apparently this is the arrangement that's in the LBW, the one that's at the very top of your screen. So, oh no, you went too far.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right on that exact screen where you were. So scroll down a little bit more. Stop.
Okay, yep.
Right. So we would have to report that because the tune, I guess, arrangement is owned by Concordia Publishing House. Right? That was in the LBW, I think. That's what it makes it look like.
Yes, that's very possible. Right? And that would be something that you would find on Sundays and Seasons.
Right.
And you know that by going to Sundays and Seasons. So if you still have LBW in your pew, then you'd have to figure that out. I say this though, it's possible. I suspect because we have a new hymnal that Augsburg Fortress may have just purchased it outright since then, but I don't know. So you would want to look on Sundays and Seasons for sure if they want to use that harmonization. Yes.
Right. But like that's how you figure out which is the right one to use. I just happened to see LBW and I'm like, oh, so that's a one to pick. Because you've got to look at, right, who are the contributors and what does for us, it's usually the ELW, although there's many congregations that still use the LBW. Right. That would give you the guide for figuring out which is the right one to report.
Yeah.
Right.
So question on that, if you search at the top based on the ELW and the hymn number and it doesn't come up, is that like a definite it's not there?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
If it says it's under one license, it's there. Okay. You just have to insert it. And as I said, that's something I've never done.
Right. Like,
I've also, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, right at the top, that's usually how you do it, Justina, is usually how I do, is I'm trying to click your screen, Julie.
Do you want me to do it this way? What do you want me to do, Norma?
Yeah, but right, I usually pick ELW, and then I'll put in the hymn number, right? So there you go, 887. I click search that way. So does that mean it's not there, even if we see in the back of the hymnal? And I didn't pick a right hymn, right? Those were just numbers that happened to be in your...
Right, and this one would not be covered under one license, by the way, 887. I'm just looking at the copyright in the back of the hymnal. So, not all of it at least, wouldn't be. That's interesting. Except maybe that's wrong. So let's search under the tune, or under the name, which is "This Is My Song." But this is covered because I used it, maybe, or I was thinking of using it. There it is. So I would go by title and not by hymnal.
And I guess this is where I was wondering, like, how I try to make sure that the type and the contributors match what's in the hymnal, and that's the right way to do it.
This is the one, right? I mean, this is it too, but this one is specific because it mentions that stanza 3 is different. I believe this is the one you would choose, the second one. is the closest. And that's what you would report. And don't ask me why ELW 887 didn't show up. I cannot answer that. I don't know.
That's why I came. No.
I
But Justina, I have run into the same.
oh,
Muted.
muted Pastor Norma.
But Justina, I've run into the same thing, and so I usually do it what Julie says, which is I'll search the song and then try to see what I can match up, and then if it really doesn't match up, I go back to Sundays and Seasons and say, so you say this is covered, right? And if it really does say one license, then I pick the one that looks the closest.
Okay, so it sounds like I'm doing the right things. I just was nervous because sometimes it's not identical, and then I get scared that I'm doing it wrong.
This is one of those times where I sort of want to have like a helpline and be on the other end of it to be able to say you're okay, you're good, right? And I also want to say it's okay if you make a mistake, right? Like it really is. You want to do your best, and that's what this is about, is trying to do our very best for our neighbor, and give them the credit where credit is due. But if you make one mistake one time, it's okay, or even two, right? So just do your very best, and I appreciate that you're doing it.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Our church has been doing a virtual hymn sing each week, and I'm wondering if we're going to have to do away with that. It sounds like a lot of, well, one, we're not doing actual singing during our worship services because of the breathing COVID aspect, but our organist is playing musics for like the prelude and during communion and everything. So I understand I have to get that information from our organist ahead of time so that I can be prepared to put it up on the screen on YouTube. But and that's stuff that can be planned ahead of time. But for virtual hymn sing, people are just making requests on they either text our organist or they just put a comment on the YouTube live chat, and I won't be able to keep up to make sure that we're covered to be able to do those things.
Agreed. I think if you want to keep doing it by request, I think you're going to have to take the requests a day or two in advance so that you can make sure that they're covered.
Yeah.
That's my suggestion. Still take requests, but it can't be in real time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. It's a great question. I do, are there any other questions about one license specifically? I do want to show, if not, I'm going to stop my share for a moment. I want to share one more thing with you, and that's the Augsburg Fortress website, where they talk about streaming and where they talk about the different licenses, specifically for literature. So, okay, but not that way. Let's see. Well, hold just for a moment, please. Okay. Sorry, my computer's not doing quite what I wanted. There we are. So this is on their website. This is actually a link on the homepage of Augsburg Fortress's website. As you know, probably from the beginning of the pandemic, they pretty much let congregations stream for free a lot of stuff for a long time, which I think is really fantastic, because I guarantee their artists were still being paid their royalties. But they are, finally said as of September 1st, we need to go back to some semblance of, what's going on. So this is where you can see the liturgy license is here. And then the Evangelical Lutheran Worship Liturgy license, those are two different things. But again, if you have the Sundays and Seasons subscription, that includes the Augsburg Fortress Liturgy license. Okay. Down here, this is the important part. To live stream or podcast copyrighted hymns as well as vocal instrumental music, choral music, vocal solo, organ, piano, or handbells. You will need to subscribe to one of the one license live stream podcast options, which cover Augsburg Fortress hymn and vocal instrumental music copyrights, as well as those of many other publishers. And you can see on the one license site how many publishers are covered. It's a lot. And that's good news for churches, because there's a lot of music out there that your musicians might want to use. So having that one license is good, or the CCLI license, right? If you are doing praise music more often, then CCLI might be the way to go.
Can I ask a question about the printing, the like sharing the music on the screen part?
Yep.
It looks like Sundays and Seasons and one license both have some of them, but maybe not all of them. Like the words to share, like does it matter how you do that?
You mean downloading them?
Yeah.
To share. Right. So you're correct. They both have some. Yeah. It's, if they aren't there, it's certainly going to be better quality if you can download from one of those, right? Because they're going to be in a file that's meant to do that. If you can't get a download, you know, you're going to end up copying from your hymnal, I guess. Norma, what would you typically do otherwise?
I would do exactly what you said, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see a rhyme or reason to why some were there and some weren't, and I wasn't sure if, you know, if I was missing something with that.
That's an excellent question, and I do not have an answer for that. Yeah, I don't know. I think what you'll find, even on if you in one license, even if the ELW hymn doesn't show there as a download, often the exact same hymn will show as a download in another hymnal, and you can just download it from there, and just report it as using it from that hymnal, because that's covered under one license too, right? You've got the one license. You don't have to have the hymnal in your pew to use it because you've got one license. Just report that you're using it from the other hymnal, and you're okay because you've got that download. So you can certainly do that.
Okay.
Did I miss anyone's questions?
I just wanted to confirm with you. We had said that the copyright information does not need to be on the screen when you're showing the words at that particular time. You could do a page at the end of your video, and that could include all your prelude, your postlude, your communion pieces, your hymns can all be on that one page. Is that correct?
I believe that if you're using PowerPoint, right, and showing words on PowerPoint, that on the first slide that has words of a piece of music is where you have to put the copyright information. Because when you're printing in a bulletin, you have to have on the first page of reprinted music, you have to put the copyright information. Okay. Right? Like some hymns, sometimes it ends up on 2 pages, and one license is pretty specific that it has to be on the first page of printed music.
Okay.
So the way that I've done it is just put it on the first slide.
And you know, the one license thing, they were suggesting you do it in more than one place
Okay.
for streaming, because that way the bots, when they go in there and check it out, right, they'll see those copyright permissions in more than one place, and they're less likely to tag you and stop you. So you might want to, do exactly as Norma's saying, put it at the place of the hymn, and then have it again at the end. Something like that, maybe. Yep. Rianne, were you gonna ask a question?
It wasn't so much a question, but it was a comment to Jill, but also to the wider video. Me and Jonathan are going to work on that. He knows what to do with the slides because he's done that with his church.
Okay.
So we're going to work that out. But also for the wider sense of the video, oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart. I'm so sorry.
Good.
Can I make a quick comment while it comes back?
Yeah.
I have found that when I put all that stuff I put in that last page for the copyright, if I put that in the notes section of the YouTube video or the Facebook post or whatever, they don't bug me at all.
Okay.
Yep.
So I put and I don't necessarily have it there. Like if it's Facebook Live, like I don't have it there till afterwards, but as soon as service is over, I just paste that copyright piece, and then they have left me alone since I've done that.
Okay. All right. Great.
You remembered. That's
Yeah,
great advice. Thank you.
Sorry. Is it okay to talk now? Okay. So we actually had one of our services flagged once. So like I kind of know like what Facebook does anyways, not what YouTube does, because we do Facebook. But it doesn't like it silences your video for a moment, and then it tells you to like submit your licensing information to them. So it doesn't like even like, it doesn't threaten to like sue you or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not going to immediately get in trouble. So it's not like, like a super, super, super bad, awful thing. Like if it's an accident or something. I made a mistake once, just to let you know.
YouTube is a little bit more forceful when they flag your video. They will say they're not going to do anything yet, but because you've got 30 days to respond. But their language does sound a little bit scarier. But every time I've had to do that, like I said, you just pop in the copyright information that you've already put into your video that the bot somehow missed, and you're good to go.
Yep. One more thing that I'd like to say, and then Melissa, you can say what you're going to say or ask your question. I didn't even mention playing CDs or videos, but for the most part, you have to be really careful about that. The chances of you breaking a copyright by playing a CD of another artist are high. The chances of playing a video, unless it's clearly public domain and you have the express written consent of the person who made the video, are high. Like, I wouldn't do it unless the video is made in-house, right, by you. I'm talking about pulling a link from somewhere. That's a whole other copyright thing. I like stay away from all of that stuff. Just wanted to put that in there, because there's no way to pay that person. That's right. We're talking about ways to report and pay people who have written hymns and liturgy and songs that are played in worship. But this is a whole other thing. So I just wanted to make sure to get that in there. Melissa, were you going to comment or question?
We've been using YouTube since like April. Initially, it was pre-recorded services that we uploaded, and then since July 12th, it's been live stream. Almost every week, we get a little, I have all the videos listed right now, and they all say copyright claim, but when you click in it for information, they always say that, it says not affected. The content ID claim on your video doesn't affect your channel. This is not a strike, not a copyright strike. And we haven't been noting any copyrights because this is all new to us and we don't have one license yet. So, YouTube hasn't done anything to us. Every once in a while we get a yellow one instead of a green one, and it's like partially blocked in like Denmark or something. But nothing has really come up so far. I guess we've been lucky, but it catches us more on our hymn sings than on our worship services.
I did see one of them advertising too that they would backdate it if you were interested in that, to go back to like the July, whatever date that you're worried about, that they'll start your license back then so that you're in compliance.
And the other piece that you can do on a YouTube channel is you can have your settings set in the account itself to not monetize videos. We have that for the Synod's YouTube account, is that we can't monetize our videos because occasionally we might use something or other. And by saying that we're not monetizing it, it means, right? So those yellow flags or those green flags that you've gotten, Melissa, if you were making money on that video, you would have to then send that money to the artist. But if we, and that has a lot to do with the ads that show up at the end of YouTube videos, or you have to wait the 5 seconds before you can click the skip ad. That's really a lot around that. And because there are a lot of YouTube channels that make money from those videos. We're churches, we don't make money from that stuff. We might invite offerings, but we don't make money from those ads.
So I'm going to make a suggestion, Melissa, and it may not be a popular one, but knowing what you just said, if it were me, I would, once you have that one license in place, I would go back and report all the way back to when you started streaming all the hymns that are covered under one license, whatever you have to, whether it's text, tune, arrangement, whatever. So that those artists can get paid for those weeks. And I would consider any hymns not covered under one license, I would consider clipping them out of those YouTube videos if you don't have permission to have them up. Just out of an abundance of the 7th commandment, I guess. And that's just me. But I think just from a right thing to do perspective, and that's going to take a little bit of work, but it won't be too difficult, right? You've got the videos, so you can literally play the video, report the hymns, and then say, we really need to just clip this minute to this minute because this hymn isn't covered. And that way those artists get paid because they can do that in arrears, exactly as Justina was saying. You can go back and report that, and they will get paid. So I think that would be a really great thing to do. And I'm thankful you're here. And if you're willing to do that, I'd be really, really thankful. So, yeah, I'd be willing to do it for you. I mean, like, that's how important it is to me.
So the September 1st deadline we weren't covered until September 1st, even on playing the hymns.
Oh, because of the free streaming?
Right. I was already planning to go retroactively to September 1st, but I wasn't planning to go back to April or July.
Right, you still had to sign up for a license. Even though they weren't charging, you still had to sign up so that you had a number.
I see what you mean, though. She's saying, does she need to report back before September 1st? I see what you mean. I mean, yeah, I guess you make a good point. Maybe just for their data tracking purposes, then it might be nice for them to know what hymns you used. But I see what you mean. As long as Was one license free, or was it just Augsburg Fortress hymns? Because that's two different things, right?
Not sure.
When I had looked into it, because we wrote out the Augsburg Fortress part was free until like July 31st or something like that. And then we made sure by August, and then I think they extended again, but we had already purchased the one license. When I had looked at it, I thought it was just the Augsburg ones that were free.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was thinking, I don't think one license has ever offered free streaming. So I think you're gonna have to go back. For me, it was all about, like when we did our synod, we did a synod-wide service on Shrove Tuesday and Holy Week. And not Shrove Tuesday, Holy Tuesday. And I wanted to play a specific piece from an Augsburg Fortress book. And I knew the composer, so I went to her and asked permission, but then I found out I didn't have to because of Augsburg Fortress's free streaming. But I didn't think one license had ever been free. So I think you're gonna have to go back and report one license, Melissa. And I'm willing to help you with that. I'm 150% serious about that. I'm not kidding. Oh, you're muted.
You know, all the worship services, our organist has been playing the music, but I don't know what the hymns are. He just plays. And so now I'm going to have to figure out what hymns they were without any words. So,
I can figure that out too.
okay.
I was an organist. I'm an organist.
Okay.
Just give me a link to your YouTube channel.
Okay.
Let me know how I can help. I am really, truly serious
Okay.
about this. Yep. Absolutely. So I think we're close to the end of our time. And this was a lot of material. I hope it was helpful. Do you have any other questions, thoughts?
Is there a way to reach out when the question hits us 5 minutes after we hang up?
Absolutely. Pastor Norma and I are happy to assist at any time. I'll put here in the, should we just say our email addresses, or how do you want to do it, Norma? Are you putting them in the chat? Oh, she's fast. There's my email address.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Because we're posting this on YouTube, right? I don't want to say out loud our email addresses, but if you're watching this on YouTube later, what you can do is go to our website, upstatenysynod.org, and on the staff page, there's a contact button, and it'll funnel emails to us from there.
Yep.
I always worry about those bots that then, like, I don't know if it's hit your congregation yet, but right, Bishop Mockholtz's email was spoofed, and I think almost the entire Conference of Bishops had their emails spoofed to get people to go and buy Amazon gift cards at the grocery store for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
I know.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. This is why we're so happy to have Pastor Norma here. She knows all the ins and outs of all of this stuff. I'm thankful for that. So yeah, please do reach out if you have any questions about any of this. I will speak for myself. I do not know everything about it, and I've worked on it a lot, and that should tell you how much work it is. It is, but it is so worth it. Just so 100% worth it to those who have worked so hard to create, the artists who have worked to create the material, that I'm thankful to have had all of you here tonight to be in discussion about it. And hopefully we were able to answer your questions. And Norma, I think you should have the last word.
Oh, I do have one more question.
Oh, yep.
Sorry. For one license's sake or our own sanity's sake, is it more advisable to report weekly, like on a Monday morning after service is done, or monthly?
I like to report weekly because I think, but one license sort of scoops it all up, I think, quarterly. So, but I think it's too easy to let it go and say, oh, I'll just do it next week, or I'll just do it next week. And then it just gets, then it becomes a job really fast. Whereas if you just go in and do it real quick after a worship service right away, it's literally 5 minutes and you're done. And you don't have to think about it again until the next week.
My guess is that you could probably even do that when you, before your worship service, when you press print on your bulletin or whatever it is that you're creating for worship, when you press the final thing, that's when you can go in and report.
I
You know
have
that you're-
found that when I go in and get that copyright information, you can add it to a list, and then I just have my weekly list there. So then as soon as the service is over, it's only 2 seconds to report it.
Mm.
Because it's already all like grouped together when I get my copyright information for the bulletin and find the song.
And I will say that if you search around, whether you're using one license or you stretch out to use CCLI because one license isn't enough or isn't the right one to use for you, if you go into their help section, you will find the exact wording that tells you this is exactly how you report this. We're going to pop up on the Synod website when we post this link so that I can put it in the description. A handy little cheat sheet that I had made. I actually made it for the bishop because for Synod Council, he makes the bulletins for Synod Council worship when we're face to face. So it's a handy little cheat sheet for this is how you copy and paste and put the things into the end that will make that a little bit easier for you. But the help section, even if you just search copyright reporting, it'll tell you exactly what you need to know. And I am ever grateful for not only for you showing up, spending an hour and a half on a Tuesday night for this conversation, and your commitment to making sure that we're honoring artists and following the law. I think this stuff is critical, and so I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your questions, and always appreciative for Julie. What a delight to get to. Julie and I don't get to do things like this together very often. So this is really fun. And so thank you. And on behalf of the artists who you're reporting for, thank you for doing that. And I think always a good way to end the night is with a blessing. And this is my favorite blessing that if somebody hasn't handed me a bulletin with a blessing already printed, it's what I use. And so I pray this night that the Lord may bless you and keep you. The Lord's face may shine on you and be gracious to you, and that the Lord may fill you with mercy and peace. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Have a fabulous night, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.